There are certain intersections in the fabric of existence, precise coordinates in time and space, where a person walks into your life and suddenly the entire concept of coincidence loses all meaning. You can try to go back and reverse engineer the timeline. You can apply logic to every sequence of events, every conversation, every glance. But deep down, your intuition already understands something your mind is still struggling to accept. Reason was never driving this ship. Logic was never in control. This person didn't just casually wander into your reality. Their entrance wasn't random. It was an arrival. A definitive, almost ceremonial crossing of a threshold you didn't even know existed. And the moment they entered, something inside you shifted at a level so deep you couldn't articulate it then, and you struggle to articulate it now. A tectonic movement in your spirit, silent, internal, irreversible. Even in this moment, as you try desperately to turn the page, as you convince yourself with every rational thought that the chapter is closed, as you intellectualize the separation and build complex arguments for why it had to end, there remains something stubborn, something inexplicable, a gravitational force that keeps dragging your attention, your thoughts, your energy back to them. It doesn't pull with desperation. It doesn't feel like lack or need. It pulls with something far more powerful, the weight of recognition, the undeniable sense that you weren't meeting someone new. You were remembering someone familiar. And if this message has found you today, if these words are landing in your awareness at this exact moment, know with absolute certainty that it is not an accident. Significant signals always land precisely when the soul is finally ready to decode them. The great psychologist Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." Right now, something deep within your core is beginning to stir. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. It's a quiet but persistent knowing that refuses to be silenced. A feeling that insists, against all evidence, against all logic, that this bond was never designed to be easily erased from the fabric of your being. Maybe you've arrived at a crossroads where you feel torn in two, caught in the impossible tension between holding on and letting go, ripped apart by the conflict between trusting what you feel and doubting yourself because of what you see with your eyes. Silence has a cruel way of magnifying doubt. Distance can make even the most certain heart question its own truth. You may have wondered if you imagined the depth, if you projected meaning onto someone who was never meant to carry it, if you created a story in your mind and then fell in love with your own creation. But let me ask you something honest. If it was all imagination, wouldn't it have faded by now? Illusions don't survive the test of time. They crumble. They dissolve. They reveal themselves for what they are. But this didn't fade. It transformed. It went underground. It became part of your internal landscape. Your soul refuses to release this person. And that refusal, that stubborn persistence of feeling, has a reason. Time didn't weaken it. Pain didn't destroy it. Every attempt to disconnect, every effort to walk away, every door you tried to close seemed to circle right back to the same quiet realization. This person matters. Not in the way the ego wants them to matter, grasping and demanding, but in the way the soul recognizes its own reflection. Let's be clear about what this isn't. This isn't obsession. Obsession is loud, anxious, demanding. It needs constant fuel and attention. What you feel is quieter, deeper. It lives beneath the noise of your thoughts and the chaos of your daily life. It waits patiently. It surfaces in moments of stillness, in dreams that feel more real than waking life, in sudden waves of emotion that arrive without warning. It's the feeling of unfinished meaning. A book that stopped mid-sentence. A song that faded out before the final chord. When you first encountered this person, something ancient woke up inside you. It wasn't just attraction. It wasn't compatibility on paper. It was something far more mysterious, familiarity without memory. A sense that you had known them before this lifetime ever bothered to introduce you. The conversation may have been simple, even mundane, but the energy underneath it was not. Your nervous system, the most honest part of you, recognized safety and intensity at the same time. That paradox, feeling completely at home and completely alive simultaneously, is extraordinarily rare, and it always leaves a mark. Jung captured this perfectly when he wrote, The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. You have been transformed. Whether you see it or not, whether you can measure it or not, you are not the same person you were before this connection, and neither are they. Connections that change us are never casual. They don't just add a chapter to your story, they rewrite the entire book. They rearrange something internal, something structural. They open doors inside you that cannot be closed again, even now, even in the distance, even in the silence. They feel you more than they show. Some people experience emotions inwardly with volcanic intensity while their outward expression remains a flat plane. Others do the opposite. Silence does not mean absence of feeling. Sometimes it means too much feeling with nowhere to put it. Your presence awakens something in them that they were completely unprepared to handle. And instead of leaning into the fire, they stepped back. They retreated into the cold, hoping that space would extinguish what you had ignited. It didn't. It never does. Energy doesn't need words to travel. It doesn't need permission or an invitation. In their quietest moments, when the distractions of the day finally dissolve, you surface. Not because they want you to, but because the connection itself insists. They replay conversations. They remember how you made them feel seen. They notice the contrast between your presence and the emotional flatness of everything else. And that comparison unsettles them deeply. They are not distant because they don't care. They are distant because they do, and they don't know what to do with it. There are battles raging inside them that you were never meant to fight for them. Old wounds, fear of vulnerability, fear of losing control, fear of being exposed at a depth they don't yet have the capacity to hold. For some people, love feels unsafe, not because of the other person, but because of what it reveals within themselves. It holds up a mirror to their own unhealed parts, their own unexamined shadows. This is where so many powerful connections fracture. One soul awakens faster. The other resists the mirror being held up to them. You became that mirror. You reflected parts of them they had buried, and instead of rejecting you, they retreated from themselves. Jung described this dynamic when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Right now, they are being directed by what they have not yet faced. But here's what cannot be undone: awakening. You cannot unsee what you have seen. You cannot unknow what you now know. You entered their life for a reason far greater than a temporary romance. You entered to remind them of emotional truth, of tenderness, of authenticity. You reached a place inside them that had been asleep. That kind of touch doesn't vanish. It lingers. It reshapes. It waits. The universe does not waste encounters. If this connection were meant to end quietly, it would have ended quietly. Instead, it echoes. It echoes in signs that catch your attention, in dreams that feel more real than reality, in moments where their name arises in your mind without effort. These are not distractions, they are signals, not telling you to chase, but telling you to trust what is unfolding beyond your control. There is a profound difference between forcing a door open and knowing it will open when the timing is aligned. Your exhaustion from this emotional limbo is valid. Loving deeply without clarity is one of the heaviest burdens a heart can carry. But your hope is not weakness, it's intuition. And intuition doesn't scream. It whispers. It waits for the noise to settle. Right now, something is shifting beneath the surface. You can't see it yet, but it's happening. Internally, the resistance is weakening. The fear is being challenged. The heart that once closed is softening under the weight of its own truth. And whether they have the awareness to admit it or not, the thought of losing you completely is becoming more frightening than the thought of trying again. This is not the end of the story. It's the pause before understanding. The space where growth happens. The silence where alignment prepares itself. You're not being asked to wait blindly. You're being asked to stay rooted in yourself, to remain open without abandoning your own balance. Jung also said, patience is the key to joy. Not passive patience that waits and suffers, but grounded patience, the kind that trusts timing without sacrificing self-respect, the kind that knows deep down that when something is real, it doesn't require force. As this message settles into you, notice what resonates without effort. Truth doesn't need convincing. It doesn't need a lengthy explanation. It simply lands. It feels like recognition. And if your heart feels calmer instead of more anxious right now, that is your confirmation. The connection is not broken. It is transforming. And in this space of transformation, you are being shaped just as much as they are. This is hard for the mind to accept because the mind wants resolution. It wants labels, together or apart. It wants timelines. When will this end? It wants to put everything in neat little boxes. But the soul works differently. The soul uses uncertainty as a refining fire. It strips away illusions, dependencies, false expectations until only truth remains. What you are experiencing now is not waiting. It's becoming. Think about it. Since this connection entered your life, you are no longer the same person. Your emotional awareness has deepened. Your standards have sharpened. You can no longer tolerate shallow connections or half-present love. Something inside you refuses to settle for anything less than what feels aligned, safe, and real. That's not coincidence. That's the imprint of a soul-level encounter. Sometimes a connection doesn't come to stay immediately. Sometimes it comes to awaken you first, to show you what's possible, to reveal what your heart actually needs, not what it was conditioned to accept. And once that awakening happens, you cannot return to sleep. Even if the person is absent, the truth they activated remains alive within you. This is why letting go feels impossible right now. Not because you're clinging to a person, but because you're holding onto a truth about yourself that was born through them. You learned how deeply you can feel, how open your heart can be, how capable you are of emotional presence and devotion. And the soul does not abandon its own expansion. You may also feel moments of doubt rising unexpectedly. Thoughts like, if this was real, wouldn't it be easier? Or, if they cared, wouldn't they show it? These questions are natural, but they come from the rational mind trying to measure something that doesn't operate on linear rules. Soul connections rarely follow straight paths. They move in spirals. They revisit the same themes at deeper levels, each time asking for more honesty, more courage, more integration. What complicates this connection is not lack of feeling. It's the timing of readiness. You are ready to open. They are still learning how. And readiness is not something you can give another person. It must be earned through inner confrontation, through facing fears that have been avoided for years, through choosing vulnerability over self-protection. There are moments when they almost reach out, moments when your name is on their lips, moments when they sit with the phone in their hand imagining what they would say. But fear interrupts. Fear of saying the wrong thing. Fear of not being enough. Fear of reopening something they don't yet trust themselves to handle. So they stay silent, hoping time will solve what only courage can. And yet time keeps bringing you back into their awareness. Because unresolved connections don't disappear. They wait. They linger. They resurface when distractions fade. Late at night, early in the morning, between conversations that feel empty, in relationships that lack depth. You become the quiet comparison they cannot ignore. This is also why signs seem to follow you lately. Not to keep you stuck, but to keep you steady. When you start to doubt your intuition, something appears to remind you that you're not imagining this. A song that speaks directly to your story. A dream where the conversation finally flows. A sudden memory that arrives with emotional clarity instead of pain. These are not meant to pull you backward. They are meant to anchor you in trust. Trust doesn't mean waiting and suffering. It means staying connected to yourself while allowing what is meant to return to find its way back naturally. There's a subtle but powerful shift happening within you. You're learning the difference between attachment and alignment. Attachment says, I need this person to be okay. Alignment says, I am okay, and I trust that what belongs to me will meet me in truth. That shift changes everything. When you stop chasing clarity and start embodying it, the dynamic transforms energetically. Something loosens. The pressure lifts. The connection is no longer fueled by anxiety but by grounded presence. And that is the state in which true reunion becomes possible. Because if they return while you're depleted, doubting or shrinking yourself, the connection would repeat its old pattern. But if they return when you're centered, self-honoring, and emotionally whole, something new can begin. Something healthier. Something mutual. You are not being punished by the delay. You are being prepared. Prepared to receive love without abandoning yourself. Prepared to recognize effort instead of chasing potential. Prepared to meet them not as someone seeking validation, but as someone standing in their own worth. They feel this shift even if they can't name it. They sense you pulling your energy back inward. They sense you're no longer waiting in the same way. And paradoxically, that's what makes the connection feel more real to them, because now it's no longer guaranteed. It must be chosen. This is where fear begins to lose its grip, because the possibility of losing you completely becomes real, and reality has a way of cutting through avoidance. The heart starts to speak louder than defense mechanisms. Memories soften. Regret surfaces. The desire for repair grows. You may feel moments where you suddenly feel calm, almost detached, followed by waves of emotion. That's alignment taking root. You're no longer fighting the connection, but you're no longer losing yourself in it either. You're allowing it to exist without controlling the outcome. That balance is powerful. It signals to the universe that you're ready for truth, whatever form it takes. And truth always responds to readiness. The path between you is not blocked. It's being cleared. Old misunderstandings are dissolving. Internal resistance is weakening. What once felt chaotic is slowly reorganizing itself beneath the surface. You don't need to do anything more right now. No convincing, no explaining, no proving. Just stay present. Stay honest with yourself. Stay open without chasing. The rest is unfolding in its own rhythm. And as this part of the journey continues, you may start to sense it more clearly. Not as longing, but as quiet certainty. A knowing that doesn't beg for reassurance. A trust that doesn't need constant signs. Something is moving toward alignment. Not rushed, not forced, but real. If this message is resonating with you, if you're feeling that quiet certainty in your chest, I want to invite you to subscribe to this channel. This is a space for souls who are awakening, for hearts that are seeking truth, for people who understand that love is far more mysterious than we've been taught. By subscribing, you're telling the algorithm and telling yourself that you're ready to go deeper. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button right now, and let's continue this journey together. There comes a moment when the longing softens into understanding, not because the connection weakens, but because your relationship to it changes. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin to sense, "This is happening for me." That shift is subtle but profound. It's the moment when pain starts turning into wisdom. You're beginning to see that this connection was never meant to consume you. It was meant to reveal you, to strip away what was false, to expose where you abandoned yourself in the past, to teach you the difference between intensity and intimacy, between attachment and devotion, between fantasy and truth. And once that lesson begins to integrate, the suffering loses its grip. You may notice now that your thoughts of them are changing. They're no longer frantic or desperate. They arrive gently, sometimes with warmth, sometimes with clarity, sometimes with a calm acceptance that whatever unfolds must be rooted in authenticity, not fear. This is a sign of emotional maturity forming inside you. And this is where the connection reaches a turning point, because when one person in a soul bond evolves, the entire dynamic is forced to respond. Energy seeks balance. When you stop chasing answers and start embodying them, the universe adjusts accordingly. What once felt stalled begins to move. What once felt confusing begins to organize itself. They are feeling this too. Even if they don't consciously understand why, your energy is no longer reaching them as need. It reaches them as presence, as an absence that speaks, as a calm strength that cannot be manipulated or ignored. And that unsettles them far more than pursuit ever could. Silence has a different meaning now. It's no longer rejection. It's processing. It's confrontation with self. They are being asked by life to look inward, to face the patterns they've relied on to stay safe. Avoidance, emotional distance, control. These strategies once protected them. Now they isolate them. There are moments when they feel the urge to return strongly, followed by moments of hesitation. This inner push and pull is not about you. It's about them standing at the edge of their own growth. Stepping forward means risking vulnerability. Staying back means losing something real. That tension cannot last forever. What's important for you to understand now is this. The outcome of this connection does not depend on how much you hope, but on how deeply you honor yourself. The more you stay aligned with your truth, the clearer the path becomes. Whether that path leads to reunion or release, it will no longer break you. It will strengthen you. But there's something the soul already knows. This connection carries unfinished meaning, not because it needs drama, but because it requires truth. Words that were never spoken, feelings that were never fully expressed, choices that were delayed out of fear. These things don't disappear. They wait for courage. Jung once said, "Where your fear is, there your task is." Right now, fear is standing in front of both of you, asking to be acknowledged. Your task was to trust your intuition without losing yourself. Their task is to open their heart without hiding. Both tasks are unfolding slowly, but inevitably. You may sense that the idea of reunion no longer excites you in the same way it once did. Not because you don't care, but because you now desire depth over fantasy. You're no longer willing to accept confusion disguised as fate. You want clarity, presence, effort, and this inner standard is not pushing them away. It's calling them forward. This is where many people misunderstand soul connections. They think they're meant to be endured endlessly. That suffering is proof of depth. But true soul bonds don't exist to trap you in pain. They exist to lead you back to yourself, and then, if aligned, to each other in truth. You're stepping into that alignment now. There may be moments ahead where communication opens unexpectedly, a message that feels sincere, a conversation that carries more honesty than before, or simply an energetic shift where things feel lighter, clearer, less strained. Don't rush these moments. Let them unfold. Authentic reconnection cannot be forced or hurried, and if fear arises in you, fear of being hurt again, fear of hoping again, let it be there without letting it lead. Fear is not a warning here. It's a memory of past pain, not a prediction of future truth. You're not the same person you were when this began. You're stronger, clearer, more grounded. You no longer need to prove your worth through patience. Your worth is already established in how deeply you've grown. Whether they meet you there is their choice, but they will feel the difference. The universe responds to embodiment, not longing. And you're embodying something new now. Self-respect, emotional sovereignty, calm trust. These qualities shift timelines. They open doors that effort never could. Pay attention to how your body feels when you think of them now. Less tightness, less urgency, more openness. That's alignment. That's the soul settling into its truth. What comes next is not about waiting. It's about allowing. Allowing life to reveal what is real. Allowing love to meet you where you stand, not where you once begged. Allowing this connection to either rise into truth or gently dissolve into understanding without resentment. But something tells you it's not finished. Not yet. There's still movement beneath the surface. Still courage gathering. Still honesty forming. Still a conversation waiting for the right moment to be spoken from a place of wholeness, not fear. Stay present. Stay grounded. Stay true to yourself. The next phase is approaching, and it will ask something different of you, not endurance, but discernment. There's a quiet strength that begins to form when you no longer need reassurance to believe what you feel. It's the strength of inner alignment. You stop scanning the outside world for signs because something inside you has settled, not settled in resignation, but in trust. Trust that whatever is real will not bypass truth forever. At this stage, the connection no longer feels like a question mark. It feels like a mirror, and mirrors don't lie. They show you exactly where you stand. You see now that this bond was never meant to be chased. It was meant to be met. And meeting can only happen when both people are standing fully in themselves. You may notice that you're no longer tempted to explain your value to anyone. You no longer feel the urge to justify your emotions or defend the depth of your heart. You know who you are. You know how you love. And you know that real love doesn't require confusion as proof. This inner grounding changes the entire energetic landscape. Because when you stop bending yourself to keep a connection alive, the connection is forced to respond honestly. Either it rises to meet you, or it reveals where it cannot. And both outcomes are forms of truth. They are feeling this shift more clearly now. The space you once filled with effort is no longer available in the same way. Not because you're closing your heart, but because you're no longer abandoning yourself. Your presence has become clean, undistorted by anxiety, undiluted by fear. And that kind of presence is confronting. It brings their unresolved emotions to the surface. It doesn't obey denial forever. There are moments now when they feel the weight of what was almost lost, and the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. This is where responsibility begins to awaken. Not guilt. Responsibility. Responsibility for choices not made, words not spoken, courage delayed. And responsibility is the doorway to change. Jung said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." You chose growth instead of fixation, integrity instead of chasing, self-respect instead of self-sacrifice. They are standing at the edge of that same choice. It requires dismantling old identities, letting go of defenses that once felt necessary, admitting vulnerability where control once ruled. What matters now is not speed, but direction, and the direction is shifting. You may sense moments of energetic closeness, even without communication. Sudden emotional warmth, a feeling of calm instead of longing, a sense of knowing rather than hoping. This is not imagination, it's resonance. When two people are aligned at the soul level, distance doesn't sever connection. It only delays expression. But expression is coming. Not as chaos, not as confusion, but as clarity. And when clarity arrives, it will not ask you to shrink. You're no longer the version of yourself who would accept breadcrumbs disguised as fate. You're no longer impressed by potential without action. You recognize now that love must be lived, not just felt. This is why the universe slowed everything down, because anything built before this level of awareness would have collapsed under its own imbalance. One heart open, one heart guarded, one ready, one afraid. That dynamic could only produce pain. What's being prepared now is different. If they return, it will be with intention, not curiosity, not loneliness. Intention, with accountability, with presence, with a willingness to meet you in the open space you now inhabit. And if they don't, you won't be broken. Because the greatest gift this connection gave you was not a promise of reunion. It was a return to yourself, a deeper self-trust, a clearer inner voice, a stronger emotional spine. You now know the difference between chemistry and soul compatibility. You know the difference between longing and alignment. You know the difference between waiting and honoring timing without self-betrayal. This is not the end of your story with love. It's the refinement of it, and whatever comes next will meet you at the level you now stand. You may feel a sense of calm confidence rising. A feeling that says, "I'll be okay either way." That's not detachment. That's wholeness. That's the soul no longer bargaining for love, but allowing it. Pay attention to how your life is expanding again. New clarity, new energy, new inspiration. This is not distraction from the connection. It's proof that you're no longer stuck inside it. You're walking alongside it, not beneath it. That changes everything. Love that is meant for you doesn't require you to disappear. And love that is real will recognize you when you stand fully as yourself. Something is preparing to resolve, not with force, but with honesty, not with urgency, but with readiness. Stay open, stay rooted, stay discerning. The final unfolding is near. There's a moment when the soul no longer asks what will happen, because it understands why everything happened the way it did. This is that moment. Not dramatic, not loud, just deeply settling. You feel it as a quiet certainty in your chest. A knowing that doesn't need reassurance, explanation, or signs to survive. You've crossed from questioning into clarity. At this level, you're no longer clinging to an outcome. You're aligned with truth, and truth has its own rhythm. You see now that the delays were not punishments. They were protections. If this connection had unfolded earlier, before both of you were shaped by growth, it would have collapsed under the weight of unhealed patterns. Love requires space to mature. Souls require time to become strong enough to hold what they recognize. You've been taught how to stand without shrinking, how to love without losing yourself, how to trust intuition without surrendering discernment. These lessons were not optional. They were necessary. And now something has changed. You're no longer reaching for this person from a place of need. You're standing in your own center. That shift alone alters the entire energetic field between you. Because love that's meant to last doesn't form through pursuit. It forms through resonance. They feel this resonance now more clearly than ever. The fear that once controlled them is no longer as convincing. The stories they told themselves to avoid vulnerability are cracking. Silence no longer feels safe. Distance no longer feels protective. It feels like loss. And loss awakens courage. Not the impulsive kind, but the honest kind. There's a realization forming in them that connection like this is rare, that you can't replace depth with distraction, that what they felt with you was not intensity alone, but recognition. And recognition changes a person permanently. They may not express it perfectly at first. Growth is not polished, it's sincere. If they return, it will be to stand in truth, to meet you without masks, to speak from a place that's been stripped of excuses. And if they hesitate a little longer, it doesn't undo what's already set in motion. Seeds don't stop growing because you can't see them yet. Roots form before anything breaks the surface. You're no longer waiting for them to choose you. You're choosing yourself. And that choice is what makes reunion possible without imbalance. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Both of you have been doing exactly that. Facing the shadows that once dictated behavior, bringing awareness where avoidance once lived. That work cannot be rushed, and it cannot be faked. This is why, if and when the reunion happens, it will feel different, calmer, clearer, more grounded. Not driven by fear of loss, but by desire for truth. You'll recognize it immediately, not by words alone, but by energy. There will be presence, consistency, effort that doesn't need to be demanded. You won't wonder where you stand. You'll feel it. And if for some reason life chooses a different resolution, you'll still stand whole. That's the ultimate sign of alignment, because the purpose of this connection was never to leave you empty. It was to awaken your capacity for depth, truth, and self-respect. And that purpose has already been fulfilled. Now anything that returns does so by choice, not by obligation. The universe is not asking you to wait blindly. It's asking you to trust what has already been built within you. To trust that love aligned with your soul will not require self-abandonment. To trust that what is real does not disappear when you stop chasing it. You've ceased to function from a place of scarcity or the terror of loss. Instead, you're now moving from a position of absolute self-value. This is the precise reason why the universe is finally lining up in your favor. Because true timing has nothing to do with the hands on a clock. It's entirely about internal preparation. And that state of readiness has finally arrived. Notice the serenity you experience when you visualize either scenario playing out. That tranquility is your validation. You no longer rely on this specific bond to feel whole. You're already entire unto yourself, and any relationship must either rise to meet you or step out of your path. That's the definition of power. That's true equilibrium. That's love stripped of all fantasy. Whatever manifests in the coming days will not bewilder you. It will not deplete your spirit. It will not make you small. It will be rooted in truth. And truth is the supreme expression of love. If this transmission found you at the critical hour, have faith that your inner spirit already holds the solution to the question plaguing your mind. Is this the moment to release or the moment to have faith? Only one of those options carries a vibration of peace. Only one feels anchored in reality. Only one feels authentic. If this message resonated with you, if it felt like it was speaking directly to your soul, I want to invite you to hit that subscribe button right now. This is a space for hearts that are awakening, for souls that are seeking truth, and I would be honored to have you as part of this growing community. By subscribing, you're not just supporting this channel, you're telling yourself that you're ready to receive more of this truth. And now, I'd love to hear from you. Type your response in the comments section below. There's another soul out there right now who needs to witness your courage, your clarity, and your truth. Your words could be the sign they've been waiting for. Let's create a ripple of awakening together. Subscribe, comment, and let's continue this journey. The final unfolding is near, and you're exactly where you need to be.